Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today, I'm going to go my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the night, man, we got MJF. MJF, there was a little video segment of MJF. He was actually outside of the arena that they were in last night in Sacramento. He was pretty much walking the streets of Sacramento. But MJF talks about Christopher Daniels and what he did to Daniels, pretty much telling Adam Page that was nothing compared to what he's going to do to Adam Page at Revolution. MJF tells Page that he is not hard to find. And like I said, he told everybody that he was roaming the streets of Sacramento. And then MJF pretty much mocks Page leading up to their matchup this Sunday at Revolution. Definitely looking forward to that matchup at Revolution. Moving on from that, we have a contract signing. A contract signing between Ricochet and Swerve. And that match will take place at Revolution. And it will be for the number one contendership for the AEW World Championship. So both Ricochet and Swerve come out to the ring. They are greeted by Tony Schiavone. Schiavone grabs a microphone, mentions to Ricochet that he doesn't have the robe. Ricochet then says the robe is in good hands, and the robe has got some modifications done to the robe. This obviously pissed off Prince Nana. Ricochet then mocks Swerve. Swerve tells Ricochet to sign the contract. Ricochet then says that he is one step closer to his goal of what he had for AEW. He also says that he is focused on Jon Moxley and Cope. After that, this obviously pissed Swerve off, after Swerve constantly kept saying that, tell Ricochet to sign the contract. Swerve then grabs a microphone, calls Ricochet an entitled prick. Swerve tells Ricochet that he is going to expose Ricochet at Revolution. Swerve tells Ricochet that there's two things that he will be remembered for. Swerve says that one was reviving Ricochet's career, and the second being Ricochet's wife. The crowd started erupting after that. The contract then was signed by both Ricochet and Swerve. Ricochet then goes to attack Swerve with scissors, but then Swerve blocks Ricochet, and then Swerve pulls out scissors of his own and ends up attacking Ricochet with his own pair of scissors. So definitely looking forward to this matchup between Ricochet and Swerve at Revolution. And it looks like Swerve got a little revenge there on Ricochet. Moving on from that, we go to our next match of the night. It's an 8-man tag team matchup. It is Will Ospreay teaming up with Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Powerhouse Hobbs, taking on the Murder Machines, Brian Keith, and Mark Davis. The match itself, I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Ospreay hitting a Hurricane Rana in the middle of the ring. Ospreay, Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Hobbs were keeping the pace of the match, with Mark Briscoe hitting an enziguri in the middle of the ring. Orange Cassidy then hits an elbow drop off the shoulders of Powerhouse Hobbs onto Mark Davis. Davis then gets up, hits a power bomb on Powerhouse Hobbs in the middle of the ring. Ospreay then gets tagged in, hits a springboard forearm in the middle of the ring. Keith then hits an avalanche exploder off the top rope. Mark Briscoe then hits a senton to the outside, taking out the Murder Machines. Ospreay then hits an Oz Cutter, and Ospreay then hits a hidden blade in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Will Ospreay, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Powerhouse Hobbs. After the match, though, Davis attacks Ospreay, and the Murder Machines attack Powerhouse Hobbs. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's Wheeler Yuta taking on Cope. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between Yuta and Cope, with Cope keeping the pace of the match. Cope then goes for a spear on Yuta, but Yuta counters it with a jumping knee strike on Cope. But then somehow Cope hits another spear on Yuta successfully, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Cope. After the match, Cope then grabs a microphone, shakes the hand of Wheeler Yuta, tells Wheeler Yuta that this is what respect feels like. After that, Jon Moxley gets in the ring. Looks like Moxley was pissed off at Wheeler Yuta due to the fact that he shook Adam Copeland's hand. Moving on from that, we have Page. Page is walking through the backstage area. It looks like he had spotted of what he thought was MJF. Come to find out it wasn't. It was pretty much a decoy, if you will. MJF then attacks Page from behind. Page then goes for a buckshot lariat on MJF, but MJ counters it into a low blow. MJF then fights AEW security. MJF then hits Page with the Dynamite Diamond ring, laying Page out in the middle of the ring. MJF then goes out to the middle, outside the ring, grabs lighter fluid as well as a lighter. He pours a lighter fluid on Adam Page. Looks like he was going to light him on fire, but MJF is stopped by the AEW staff and security. Again, looking forward to the matchup between MJF and Adam Page at Revolution. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a tag team matchup. It is Thunder Rosa teaming up with Chris Statlander, taking on Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between both teams with Statlander and Thunder Rosa keeping the pace of the match. But Megan Bayne ends up hitting an F5 on Thunder Rosa in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne. Hats off to Ford and Bayne for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a Max Caster Open Challenge. And it looks like Jay White accepts the challenge. He ends up having a matchup with Max Caster, a squash match, with Jay White quickly hitting a Blade Runner on Max Caster, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Jay White. After the match, Jay White grabs a microphone. He talks about Adam Copeland. He also says that he will keep his eyes pretty much set on the main event matchup between Copeland and Mox at Revolution. Moving on from that, we have a sit-down with Renee Paquette. She is interviewing Mariah May and Toni Storm for their match leading up to Revolution. Before the interview even gets started, Mariah May gets up, pretty much spits in the face of Toni Storm. Toni Storm does nothing. She just sits there. May says that Toni is nothing without her. Toni then mocks Mariah May, but then Toni says that people might end up forgetting about Mariah May after their match at Revolution. Interesting stuff there between Mariah May and Toni Storm. And then the end off the night, we had Ricochet and Okada teaming up to take on Swerve and Brody King, and it ended up being a pretty decent matchup for the main event of AEW Dynamite last night. A couple of things I want to talk about, man, when it pertains to AEW Dynamite before I get the hell up out of here. Was it a decent show? It was an okay show. Have I seen better go-home shows leading up to pay-per-views for AEW? Absolutely. But I've also seen worse. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the show last night was entirely bad. But I do have some, I wouldn't say concerns or worries, but there is things that really caught my attention last night with AEW. Number one, you had MJF start the show, having a video package played throughout, on the Titantron, pretty much calling out Adam Page. I think that matchup between MJF and Adam Page is going to be really good. I think it's one of the best feuds right now, one of the best feuds in AEW right now. And honestly, I mentioned this a while back ago, that this could be a feud, if they do it correctly, could possibly save AEW. It's something where these are two household names for AEW. These guys pretty much were, the originals in AEW when the company, was pretty much presented to everybody. And they've been household names for AEW for quite a while, especially MJF. I mean, MJF really made a name for himself under the AEW umbrella. So this is definitely one of those matches where a lot of people want to see it, myself included, and even people that I've talked to. This is a match that, again, this is also a feud that a lot of people have been wanting to see for quite a while, and we're finally going to get that matchup at Revolution. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then we get the Swerve and Ricochet segment, the sit-down with Tony Schiavone, the contract signing for their matchup at Revolution, and obviously that match takes place at Revolution, and the winner of that match will be the new number one contender for the AEW World Championship. After the contract signing was over, my initial thought process of this was, how is this going to play out? And what I mean by that is there's a lot of situations and how this matchup could end, in my honest opinion. A lot of people have said a lot of things about how this match can go between Ricochet and Swerve. And speaking of Prince Nana, a lot of people had this belief that, Prince Nana might end up turning on Swerve and join Ricochet. Am I against that? No. And the reason why I'm not is because clearly at some point there needs to be a change between Swerve and Prince Nana. I'm not saying it's not working. But obviously everybody wants change. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people are trying to get to the point now where, really what else is there left to do between Prince Nana and Swerve with them kind of, teaming up all this time? A lot of people are pointing at Prince Nana joining Ricochet. Am I against it? No, I'm not against it. And the reason why I'm not against it is because, A, can Ricochet wrestle? Yes. But is he horrible on the microphone? Yeah. Ricochet has a really hard time cutting a promo, and his mic skills are awful. I'm just keeping it real with y'all. With that being said, if Prince Nana would have joined, was to join the likes of Ricochet, Prince Nana could be the sounding board for Ricochet, which I'm not against that at all. The other name that's been floating around that's very interesting that they might end up bringing in at Revolution and it's been floating around for quite a while now, is Samantha Irvin. Now, if you guys don't know who Samantha Irvin is, she used to be the former ring announcer for WWE, I believe for both Raw and SmackDown at one point. She ended up leaving the company. And now she's, pretty much, doing her own thing, but she's also the wife of Ricochet. And a lot of people are starting to wonder whether we're going to see Samantha Irvin join her husband, being Ricochet, at this weekend show at Revolution. Will she come out wearing the robe? Pretty much mocking the robe and mocking Prince Nana. Will she be the sounding board for Ricochet moving forward and kind of being Ricochet's on-air manager, if you will. It's still yet to be seen, but am I against it? No, I'm not. I think Samantha Irvin would be a great addition to AEW in the aspects of putting her with Ricochet, having her be the sounding board for Ricochet, because, like I mentioned earlier, man, the mic skills of Ricochet is just not there. The guy can wrestle. I'm not taking anything away from his athletic ability and what he can do in that ring. But the one thing that's kind of crucial on Ricochet is his mic skills. And he needs someone to be a sounding board for him because, man, every time he gets on the microphone, it's cringy. I'm not going to lie to you. It's absolutely cringy. But with that being said, I mean, I want Swerve to win this matchup to put him back as a new number one contender for the AEW title, because I would not be opposed to seeing a possible matchup between Swerve and Jon Moxley if Moxley is successful in beating Adam Copeland at Revolution. I'm not against seeing that because both those guys are going to tear the house down if we get a matchup between Moxley and Swerve for the AEW title. I'm all for that. And if that were to happen, you got no complaints out of me. But on the flip side of that coin, you look at someone like Ricochet. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Ricochet versus Jon Moxley, but at the end of the day, hopefully, if that were to be the case, then Ricochet has either Prince Nana joining him, or we have Samantha Irvin, Ricochet's wife, joining him and being the sounding board for Ricochet. And there's also other scenarios that might play out as well. I mean, if Swerve would have beat Ricochet and become the new number one contender, there's also could be something where possibly, maybe, Swerve does join the likes of the Hurt Syndicate and the Hurt Syndicate, and they take on the Death Riders and try to dethrone the Death Riders and Jon Moxley, which, again, I'm not against that either. I think that would be a great thing for them to do with something different. Obviously, there is some unfinished business, at least what I thought, some unfinished business there between Bobby Lashley and Swerve, but it looks like they're not even doing anything remotely close to having anything happen between Lashley and Swerve. So, I mean, again, it's just one of those things, man, where, it's going to be an interesting match. I think Revolution is going to be very interesting and very telling as well, but when it pertains to the Ricochet and Swerve match, I could see, Prince Nana turning his back on Swerve and helping out Ricochet. That's a possibility. And like I said, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation that Samantha Irvin might actually end up joining Ricochet in AEW and kind of be the sounding board for Ricochet, which, if that's the case, I'm absolutely all for that as well. And it'd be a great way to bring her into the fold of AEW. I'm all for it. The other things that happened last night, obviously we got the tag team matchup between Statlander and Rosa taking on Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. And it was pretty much sponsored or promoted by the new movie that's coming out, the Queen of the Ring, I believe it's called. And it's the documentary film, if you will, or the biopic of Mildred Burke. Former, first ever, I believe, NWA Women's Champion. So a lot of AEW talent were a part of making this movie. The names of Toni Storm, Camille, Britt Baker. I might be missing a couple names, but a lot of AEW talent were a part of the making of that movie. So the tag team matchup with Stat and Rosa taking on Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford was pretty much sponsored by this movie. There's two issues that I have with that. Number one, you have names that are not even, they're not even talking about the names that are also a part of this movie, like Camille and Britt Baker. We haven't seen Camille since the incident that she had with Mercedes Moné. So I don't know what the hell happened with Camille. I don't know if she's still currently employed with the company. Was there some kind of issue, a backstage issue with her and Mercedes Moné, which ultimately got Camille pushed off AEW television, and right now she's sitting back in catering? I don't know what the hell happened with Camille. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know if she's injured. I don't know if she's, cleared to wrestle at this point. I don't know. But it's just kind of ironic how seemingly they just, kind of wrote her off TV with nothing, no kind of indication of what the hell happened. Was there an incident backstage? Was there an issue between her and Tony Khan? What the hell happened to Camille? And when this, match happened, again, it was sponsored by the Queen of the Ring movie. Well, Camille played a vital role in that movie, as well as Britt Baker. And none of these girls, nobody pretty much named Camille or Baker throughout that entire little interview leading up to the matchup and that tag team matchup. There was no mention of Britt Baker. There was no mention of Camille. So my thing was, knowing the back history of Baker and Tony Khan, was there an issue here between Camille and Tony Khan as well? And that's the reason why we haven't seen her on TV, just like Britt Baker. And the fact that neither one of these women were actually mentioned about a movie that they're also playing in. So, like, that, for me, that kind of pissed me off. It's like, damn, bro, are we going to be that petty not to even mention Britt Baker and Camille that were also a part of this movie that you're having as a sponsor for this matchup between Stat and Rosa taking on Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. So there was no absolute mention at all whatsoever of Britt Baker and Camille who play a role in this movie. Nothing. Now, the tag team matchup itself, was it a decent match? Yeah, it was a decent match. But my issue with this as well is Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. Why? What made this, what was the purpose of Ford teaming up with Megan Bayne? What's the story behind that? We got no logic around the reason why they teamed up Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne. Now, are they hyping up Megan Bayne? Absolutely, and rightfully so. She comes in here like, she's incredible. She's a great talent. She's, a formidable opponent for a lot of people. She's, a brick house, no point intended. But they're building her up to be the next big thing in AEW, especially within the women's locker room. And now we have her in tag team matches teaming up with Penelope Ford, and nobody knows, at least I don't know, why the hell they're teaming up Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. What is the deal here? The reason why we got this tag team matchup is because of what happened, I believe, last week when Ford attacked Statlander and Thunder Rosa got involved and all that shit happened with them. And that's the reason why we got this tag team match last night with Stat and Rosa taking on Megan Bayne and Ford. But again, what is Ford's, issue with Megan Bayne? Why is she attaching herself to Megan Bayne? What is the issue here? Why is Tony Khan pushing this tag team? What is the reason behind it? And that's what I mean by these logic gaps and these loopholes within AEW. And it's one of those things where you got to kind of scratch your head a little bit, like, hey, what the hell's going on here? Was it a decent match? Yeah, it was a decent match. Thunder Rosa ended up taking the pin, but and I think that has a lot to do with what happened last week, and that whole issue with Thunder Rosa and Megan Bayne. But my initial thought process was, why are they teaming up Ford and Megan Bayne? That was my only issue that I really had with that. What is the logic behind that? And I don't know if we're ever going to get it. The other big thing, obviously, too, and it was announced before Dynamite went on the air last night, is that, and it was breaking news, according to Excalibur, that, AEW had signed a deal with Amazon Prime. And that deal pretty much allows AEW to put their pay-per-views on Amazon Prime for, Amazon customers to purchase AEW pay-per-views moving forward. It's another platform where, you can purchase AEW pay-per-views moving forward, starting with this weekend's Revolution. To me, honestly, man, it's not that much of a breaking news. And honestly, for what it's worth, it kind of pissed me off. Number one, I'm happy that they're making deals and everything else like that to, get their coverage out more for the AEW audience. I'm all for that. But my God, man, it would have been more breaking news if you were like, oh yeah, we're doing Amazon Prime, and you get 20-30% off for the pay-per-view or whatever. But that's not the case. If you're a person that doesn't have Amazon Prime and you want Amazon Prime, you would have to pay for the subscription for Amazon Prime on top of the $50 that you would also have to spend for the pay-per-view as well. There's no deal, and even the people that currently have Amazon Prime now, like myself, you're still going to have to pay the $50 to watch the pay-per-view. Just because you have Amazon Prime doesn't mean oh, you know what? Because I have Amazon Prime and I'm an Amazon Prime member, I automatically get the pay-per-view for free. It don't work that way. And a lot of people got confused with that shit because a lot of people assumed, well, hey, I'm already an Amazon Prime member, I should already get this pay-per-view for free. It don't work that way. Now, it could happen on the fact that you might be able to get a percentage off due to Amazon Prime credits. That might be the case, and you might be able to get, $10 off or $20 off, maybe, but that's about it. Other than that, you're still forking out the $50 on top of an Amazon Prime subscription that you're paying every month or whatever, and it's not like you're getting these pay-per-views at a discounted rate. That's not going to happen. And a lot of people, myself included, have still been waiting for the announcement of the first ever pay-per-view that was supposed to be on Max. And that was the other thing that pissed me off with this announcement is that, okay, yeah, you announced Amazon Prime partnering up with AEW to showcase their pay-per-views moving forward, starting with Revolution. Okay, fine. What happened to Max? Everybody that I know of that watches AEW faithfully, we're waiting desperately for, okay, what's going on with this Max deal? Everybody's talking about this, HBO Max deal and how it was going to be, incorporated into AEW and how they were going to showcase AEW pay-per-views and yada, 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 and at a discounted rate. We haven't got a single inkling at all, a single solitary thing saying that, hey, this is going to be the pay-per-view that's going to start on HBO Max at this rate, yada, yada, yada. We got nothing. So rather than what they're originally working with HBO Max, which we haven't got any more details about, we're just going to jump that and go over to Amazon and let people know that we assigned with Amazon, and you can watch Amazon AEW pay-per-views on Amazon. That's what pissed me off, because at the end of the day, we're still not getting these pay-per-views at a discounted rate. We're just not. And people can say what they want. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm over here struggling or anything else like that, but what pisses me off with AEW is that they have 8 or 9 shows, pay-per-views a year. And they're $50 a pop, bro. It adds up. I'm not saying it's not. It doesn't add up. It does. And then you're also putting $50 towards these pay-per-views with no build, no storylines, and you're investing your hard-ass working money on these pay-per-views when, at the end of the day, you really, I mean, yeah, you might get some good-ass matches once in a while, but there's no storyline, there's no build, there's nothing captivating you enough sometimes to even buy the pay-per-views. The reason why you're buying them is because you want to see the wrestlers that are on the card wrestle, but there's no storyline behind it for you to genuinely get invested in. That's the problem. And that's what initially pissed me off with this breaking news announcement from Excalibur, is that, okay, you announced this, but there's no inkling of what's going on with HBO Max, but instead, AEW signs a deal with Amazon for them to put their pay-per-views on Amazon. Okay, fine. What about HBO Max? What's going on with that? You know, there should have been at least one pay-per-view by now for Max that has been at least on there, and we're not even getting that. You know what I mean? So, and we're not even getting, and not only that, we're not even getting the replays from these pay-per-views on HBO Max either. We're not getting shit pay-per-view wise on HBO Max right now. The only pay-per-views that you're seeing on HBO Max right now from AEW is from the very beginning of AEW. We're talking like 2019, 2020, something like that. That's it. You're not getting current pay-per-views on HBO Max right now, but now they're going to put it on Amazon, not even at a discounted rate. You're still paying, like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have Amazon Prime, you had to pay for the subscription on top of the $50 for Revolution. Now, if you're a current Amazon Prime member, you're not getting that event for free. You still have to fork out the $50 to still watch that, even though that you are currently subscribed to Amazon Prime. There's no discounted rate. Like I said, the only way you might have a discount maybe, or some money off, is if you have like a $10 to $20 credit that you can use towards that pay-per-view. Other than that, you're still going to have to fork the $50 out. Like I mentioned earlier, the money that you're working, all the money that you're working for, and everybody's working their ass off for to make money, you're still forking out that money regardless whether you're an Amazon Prime member or not. So, like, that, to me, is not really breaking news. And that's what kind of pissed me off. It's like, bro, what the fuck are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? Like, what happened, what happened to HBO Max? There's been no talk about Max at all. Oh, yeah, we're going to throw some old school pay-per-views on there and yada, yada, yada. What about now? The whole, mission statement when they signed with HBO Max to actually get that deal was, oh, yeah, we're going to have pay-per-views on there and it's going to be at a discounted rate. Well, when the fuck are we getting it? You know what I mean? Like, they had this Max deal for a little while now. Like, when's it going to be the first pay-per-view? Is it going to be All In July? You know what I mean? Or are we just not doing any pay-per-views for Max for 2025, and then we're going to wait till 2026 to start doing that? Which, if that's the case, I'm sorry, that's bullshit. That's complete and utter bullshit. We should be having pay-per-views on there now. If you don't want to do it now with, obviously, Revolution, then do it with All In or All Out or whatever. Like, when are we getting anything with that? There's been no indication at all on what they're doing pay-per-view wise on HBO Max. No one knows anything right now, which is, to me, honestly, it's a bunch of bullshit. And with last night's Dynamite, again, it's not one of those go-home shows that was, horrible. It's just, my thing is that, where are we going? Like, there's so much logic gaps in this shit. And I'll also say this, the Mariah May and Tony Storm sit down, that was some of the best work I see Mariah May do as far as cutting a promo in her entire career in AEW. It was raw, it was real. I mean, the fact that she didn't even say nothing to Tony Storm in the first 30 seconds, but she walks up and pretty much spits in Tony Storm's face, which set Renee off. And Tony Storm just sits there holding her championship and doesn't say a word and lets Mariah May get all her grievances out towards Tony Storm. And she just sits there and just stares down Mariah May after she doesn't spit in her face, blatantly. And she's just sitting there listening to Mariah May vent her frustrations and her grievances towards Tony Storm, and she's just sitting there doing nothing. You know what I mean? But then once Tony Storm started talking, it got to a point where, she was making some, the realization on the fact that she's trying to do everything that she can in her power to almost feel as if that once this match is over, it's over. This is the Hollywood ending. The matchup here, and honestly, it should be. The matchup at Revolution between Mariah May and Tony Storm for the AEW Women's Championship should be the end-all, be-all. Both these women need to move on. Toni Storm needs a new challenger for her AEW Women's Championship. Mariah May needs to even possibly take some time off or work her way back up the ladder. And I would say this, when it pertains to Revolution, if Toni Storm is successful in beating Mariah May for the AEW Women's Championship or retain the AEW Women's Championship, I would have to ask myself, okay, well, who's next for Toni Storm? In my honest opinion, once the visa issue is taken care of, the new number one contender to Toni Storm's AEW Women's Championship should be none other than Jamie Hayter. Jamie Hayter needs to be in a segment or something with Toni Storm. That's the match to make if Toni is successful in retaining her belt at Revolution. The next challenger should be, and only should be, Jamie Hayter. That's it. There's no other name right now that would even remotely, for me, entertain right now to go up against Toni Storm right now besides Jamie Hayter. There's nobody left. And, I don't want another match with Mariah May. Like I said, this should be it. They're calling it the Hollywood ending. Then this should be the end-all, be-all between Toni Storm and Mariah May. And I think it's going to be a great match. I think Toni Storm, the timeless Toni Storm character, is one of the best characters in all of AEW. And she's doing a phenomenal job with that character because it's must-see television, man. Because what she does with her promos and her segments and her matches alone, it's priceless. So it's going to be a great match at Revolution. Absolutely. I think this match might be better than the matchup at AEW's Grand Slam, in my honest opinion. But this should be the end-all, be-all between Mariah May and Toni Storm. And after that, I think Jamie Hayter should be the new number one contender for the AEW Women's Championship once the visa issues that she has are fixed and she's on her way back to AEW. But, and I say the same thing about Mariah May. Not Mariah May, Mercedes Moné. Obviously Moné, she has a lot of titles right now. She's on an undefeated streak. She has a matchup at Revolution, I believe, against Watanabe. It should be a decent match. I don't know a lot about Watanabe personally, but I've heard that she's, a good wrestler. She's decent in the ring. But obviously, for what it looks like, they're going to be pushing Mercedes Moné to get the victory over Watanabe, and she's going to be carrying the TBS title for quite some time. There's been some people that have said that, maybe Tony Khan wants, Mercedes Moné to break Jade Cargill's TBS title run, which if that's the case, Moné's not dropping that belt anytime soon. And hopefully that's not the case. But the problem is with Mercedes Moné is who's going to be the next challenger for Moné to actually dethrone Mercedes Moné. And the one name that pops in my head that I would love to have beat Mercedes Moné would be Athena. And I mentioned this multiple times in the past. Athena versus Mercedes Moné, that match needs to happen. Now, there has been some, steady pickup with that, with the back and forth banter for them on Twitter between Athena and Mercedes Moné. But that match needs to happen. Absolutely. And Athena needs to be a part of AEW. I think she's wasting her talent away being over Ring of Honor. And being as it may, the fact that All In this year is taking place in Texas, where Athena is from, she's got the hometown crowd behind her on that matchup. I would book that match at All In between Mercedes Moné and Athena for the TBS title. Or you could do it for the TBS and Ring of Honor women's title. It's a win-win situation for either Moné or Athena. Athena dethrones Mercedes Moné, becomes the TBS champion, and she holds the Ring of Honor belt as well. Or, Moné somehow beats Athena, and then Moné adds another belt to her collection as it is, and then she becomes the new Ring of Honor Women's Champion. So it's kind of a win-win situation if you're going to book that matchup, and that's how I would book it. Title versus title. Absolutely. And I would do it at All In July, in Texas. And have Mercedes Moné versus Athena. That match needs to happen, and hopefully, Tony Khan pulls the trigger on that matchup, because that's a match a lot of fans have been waiting to see. And it would be one hell of a match. Adam Copeland having a matchup with Wheeler Yuta, I thought it was a decent match. But my thing is, when it pertains to Cope and Jon Moxley, there's also situations in that can go either way. On one side of the fence, you have Jay White. Jay White could turn heel and turn his back on Adam Copeland. He said that he will keep an eye on that matchup between Cope and Moxley. He gave Cope some praise, talking about when he came in, when he debuted for AEW. But there could be a very good chance where there could be some kind of jealousy there from Jay White with Adam Copeland, saying, hey, man, I really helped you get this matchup. And maybe, Jay White takes that opportunity away from Cope, which also gives Jon Moxley the win. Or maybe we get Christian Cage cashing on his contract, and he walks out of Revolution AEW, world champion. Maybe Cope does beat Jon Moxley. And then Christian Cage comes down quickly, cashes in his contract, and then hits a kill switch on Copeland in the middle of the ring of Revolution, and now Christian is the new AEW World Champion. That's also a high possibility. You know what I mean? And then it would set up Cope versus Jay White, and Christian moves on as the AEW World Champion. I mean, at this point, I don't give a damn if it's Christian or Copeland. Anything at this point will be better than Jon Moxley holding that belt right now. The Death Rider situation needs to come to an end. That shit's not working. I'm sorry, and maybe it is getting to that point where it's starting to slowly unravel. If you look what happened after the matchup between Copeland and Yuta, and then the fact that, Copeland extended his hand out to Wheeler Yuta, shook his hand, told Wheeler Yuta this is what respect looks like, and then Cope walks off, and then Moxley jumps in the ring, gets face-to-face with Wheeler Yuta. He's pushing Yuta away and pushing him in the face, and then, Yuta turns around and pushes Jon Moxley and storms off. Maybe it's starting to slowly unravel, and honestly, it needs to happen. Because the Death Rider situation, that whole storyline, if you want to call it that, has been a humongous failure for AEW. It needs to go. They need to scrap this idea with the Death Riders and get back to what brought them to the dance. And that's just the way it is. The Death Rider situation, you want to talk about killing the business. It's ultimately killing AEW. People don't give a shit anymore about this Death Rider situation. They hate it. They hate the theme music. They hate the whole, whatever you want to call it, storyline behind it. It does not work. And Tony Khan and AEW, they keep pushing this narrative as if everybody's loving it. When I can tell you right now, a lot of people don't. And it's probably one of the biggest reasons why your ratings are in the toilet right now, because people are tired of seeing this Jon Moxley Death Rider shit. It's getting old. It really is. And like I said, man, when it pertains to Copeland and Moxley, it's going to be a great match. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not going to be a great match. But it can go in abundance of different ways. It's the same thing I said about the Swerve and Ricochet match. Nana can turn his back on Swerve and join the likes of Ricochet. We could see Ricochet's wife, Samantha Irvin, also be a part of this matchup as well. Her name's been floating around about possibly having her show up at Revolution. I mean, it's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility. But AEW as a whole, and I mentioned this a couple days ago when I talked about the Rey Fenix situation and the fact that he was now a free agent. This company and the way that they're going right now, you could tell, and if you can't tell, then I don't know what to tell you, but it's got a shelf life, man. This company is not what it once was in the first 3 years of AEW's existence. And obviously things do change. I get that. But just because things change doesn't mean they necessarily have to change for the worst. They could have changed and made the show better. And it's the complete opposite. They changed everything and the shit got worse. When AEW first came into existence, they had, if not the best tag team division on the planet. Right now, it's one of the worst things going in AEW right now. You have the Outrunners going up against the Hurt Syndicate this weekend at Revolution for the AEW titles, and the Hurt Syndicate's going to pretty much wipe the floor with the Outrunners, which is a shame. And then you have to ask yourself, well, if that's the case, then who's going to be next for the Hurt Syndicate? Because right now, there is no goddamn tag team division that's even, that's worth a damn right now to challenge the Hurt Syndicate for the AEW tag team titles. They don't have a tag team division. It's not there anymore. You got the Acclaimed. You got, Anthony Bowens and Max Caster. They're split up. Caster's doing his own thing, trying to put out open challenges to prove that he's the best wrestler in the world. We haven't seen anything from Anthony Bowens. We don't know what the hell is going on with the Acclaimed. And as far as I'm concerned, I think they made a humongous mistake breaking up the Acclaimed. Because Max Caster ain't going to have no singles run. That shit's a joke. And neither is Anthony Bowens. You need to have those guys as a team. Keep them as the Acclaimed. If you want to, brighten things up for the Acclaimed and change a little bit, fine. But you keep them as a tag team. Because right now, AEW has no tag teams that are compelling enough to even want to challenge for the Hurt Syndicate for their AEW tag team titles right now. They don't even have that. They just don't. And the Outrunners, unfortunately, at one time they were, a tag team that was being talked about. Now it's not the same. I feel like they're being, fed to the wolves at this point. And the Hurt Syndicate are going to wipe the floor with the Outrunners at Revolution and walk out still AEW tag team champions. I do not see the Outrunners beating Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin for those AEW tag team titles at Revolution on Sunday. I just don't see it. I just don't. With that being said as well, I'm also hoping for maybe a surprise, or maybe a debut. Maybe we see Speedball Mike Bailey. The newly acquired Speedball Mike Bailey, he shows up at Revolution. Or Josh Alexander, who's been testing free agency. Maybe he might show up at Revolution. It'd be great to see the Young Bucks, being the fact that they're going to be in L.A. for Revolution, and that's pretty much in their wheelhouse. Both Matt and Nick Jackson are from the state of California, it's probably, a hop, skip, and a jump from them to go from their homes over to be at Revolution Sunday night. So, again, hopefully we get some kind of debut or surprise or return, something. Because they need it. I'm not saying the card's going to suffer. No, the matches are going to be good. But it'd be nice to have a surprise or a debut or a return show up at Revolution. Absolutely. And hopefully we get that. But the card itself, match-wise, it's not bad. I mean, a lot of people are not really, happy about seeing Ospreay versus Fletcher again, but you got to understand, man, Ospreay and Fletcher are going to tear the house down. And the difference with this matchup compared to last time is that this match at Revolution will take place in a steel cage. So it's going to be incredible, man. I think Ospreay and Fletcher is going to be one hell of a match. You got Takeshita defending the international title against Kenny Omega at Revolution. That's going to be a really good match. Both Omega and Takeshita are going to tear the house down. Definitely looking forward to that. There's also been rumors and speculation that AEW also might possibly combine the international title with the continental title and make it just one title. So again, if that were to happen, I'm all for that as well. AEW already has way too many title belts as it is, and just to combine both belts into one, the continental and the international title, I'm all for it. I don't know if you call it AEW's Intercontinental Championship. I don't know, but combining both those titles, yeah. The Continental Championship means absolutely jack shit. It means nothing at all. Okada barely even defends that belt. The title means it's useless, to be honest with you. But like I said, man, it wasn't a bad go-home show. But I'll also say this, too. I think AEW and Tony Khan are also putting a lot more attention on their B show rather than their A show. I think Collision's getting a lot more, I would say a lot more better than what it has been compared to Dynamite. And I feel like they're putting a lot more investment and time into Collision as far as booking the show than what they are with their A show being Dynamite, which is, to me, is crazy. I feel like, with Dynamite, they would bring a lot more storylines and intrigue to Dynamite being their A show than they would be on Collision. But for the past couple weeks, that doesn't seem to be the case, man. It looks like they're putting a lot more attention onto Collision. Which, again, I'm not against it. I'm not. I'm just surprised and shocked that they're not giving more attention to their A show being Dynamite. But with that being said, am I excited about Revolution? Yeah, man. I think the card from top to bottom is going to be really good. You got some pre-show matches. I think the Costco guy is supposed to be a part of that match. I think he's supposed to team up with Orange Cassidy. So you got some pre-show matches on the 0 hour, if you will, to kick off to Revolution. And Revolution, the card itself, the main card, it's stacked. It's stacked from top to bottom. Definitely looking forward to the matches that are on that card. And, usually 9 times out of 10, Tony Khan does provide really good pay-per-views and really good matches and really good moments during, for one of his pay-per-views. So I'll give Tony Khan that. He is Mr. Pay-per-view, and I'm definitely looking forward to Revolution this Sunday. I think this will be one of the top pay-per-views for AEW this year so far. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, man. And I think, like I said, hopefully we get some surprises or a debut or a return at Revolution. I'm hoping. And like I said, for Dynamite, it was a decent go-home show at best. And hopefully, when it comes to Revolution, hopefully we're not disappointed. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying